Hi guys, this is Stormouse03.
And I'm Praetorian.
Welcome to Ramblings of Mad People, August 2023 edition.
I feel like August disappeared into the ether.
Like
Again.
July.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was like super warm. It was super warm in July, and then August was just damp and meh. And now we're calling it in September. It's super hot again.
Right.
Which is weird because September's usually when it's tailing off.
Right.
So I have no idea what the weather's doing.
Yeah, the weather seems pretty normal here. Like it is getting cooler and starting to feel like fall, which is great. Because fall is my favorite season.
Mine too.
Woohoo!
I call it autumn.
Yes, they are both the same season. Hi, Brutus. Did you want to come say hello?
I think he just wants belly rubs.
Yes, probably. My kitty cat. Let's talk about video games.
Yes. I had a really good August.
Yes, you did. What was your you played a bunch of things, so why don't you start us off?
Okay, so I played Tinykin, Venba, Untitled Goose Game, A Plague Tale, Wytchwood, Citizen Sleeper. These are on Xbox, and then I played Astro's Playroom on PlayStation. And we started Far Cry 6, but haven't finished it yet, and I'm working my way through Immortals Phoenix Rising, so that'll be hopefully next month.
Yes. So, lots of things you accomplished. I did a fair amount as well. So let's start off with your first one.
Okay. I'll start off with Tinykin.
Nice.
It was a fun, not too challenging, not too long, kind of in the vein of like Banjo-Kazooie and some of the like older Mario games like 64, Sunshine. You're basically like this small person who is like, I don't know, like maybe a few centimeters tall, like an inch high, in a house.
Yeah. Like the same size as like an ant.
Kind of, yeah. I think you're a little bit bigger than that, but not by a lot.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the scaling is more like you're about an inch tall.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like you're basically in this house searching for a way to get home because you've kind of been sucked through a wormhole. And you befriend these little creatures called Tinykin that you can use like Pikmin to help you like solve puzzles and collect things. And there's like 4 kinds? Red, purple, blue. Oh no, there's 5. Red, purple, blue, yellow, and green. And they each have different functions. So like the purple ones are strong and can carry things. The red ones will blow things up. The yellow ones make like specific like bridges and ramps and things in specific places. The blue ones carry electric charge, so you can use them on plugs and sockets to try and like power things around the house. And each of the levels is like a different room. And they're each like under the control of like different species of insects. So there's rhino beetles and praying mantises and dung beetles, obviously in the bathroom. And you just basically do like little quests and collect pollen, and the pollen's used to like upgrade your like glide ability, which is basically like a bubble around your space helmet so that you can like glide longer distances. And what I liked about it was that there wasn't really any backtracking. You did an area, once you got to the end of the area, as long as you collected most things, you would be able to finish that area without needing to go back. I also didn't use a guide, which was nice, because a lot of the games I played this month, or played last month, I used guides on, so it was nice on that one to just kind of go, okay, I'm just going to play.
Yeah. And a lot, like, the stuff that you're collecting isn't too difficult to find, and as long as you're just looking around the area pretty well, it's pretty easy to find all the pollen and to find all the hidden things. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the pollen had different stages where it was like you need 500, and then it would be like you found 1,000, and so you can buy the ability upgrade,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like actually this is the max amount that's in the level. Go find it all.
Yeah.
The traversal was good. It was colorful. It was fun. It just wasn't. It felt like a nice throwback game,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't too difficult.
Yeah.
Would recommend if you can play.
Indeed. Yeah, I played that one toward the end of last year and really, really enjoyed it. So
I played it because you recommended it.
definitely a recommend. And especially if, like, you know, I don't have a Nintendo console, I can't play Pikmin, you know, especially if you're looking for that kind of game and you can't play Pikmin 3 or 4 or whatever is out.
I don't even know if they made any past 2.
I know they made 3. I feel like another one came out recently.
Okay, I mean, I've been out of the loop with Nintendo stuff for a while, other than like, oh, there's a new Zelda game or a new Mario.
Yeah, so very cool. My first game that I did this month, I know you did also, is called Venba. And it was a new release for August, and it released to Games Pass, so I was able to play it for free. I know you bought it on a little bit of a sale.
Yeah, I just kind of decided to buy a couple of games, like 4 games that I wanted to play because I'd been doing my backlog. And so I was like, I just want to play some new things. And so you played that, and I decided to buy it as well.
Yeah, it was a pretty simple, short little cooking game, and so it was narrative focused. It was about this family who immigrated from India to Canada, and the mixture of their cultures and trying to keep their culture alive through the food that they were cooking, and so the mechanical parts of the game were cooking food, and the rest was kind of dialogue and text messages to tell the story of this family as they lived their lives and had some challenges and some conflicts and some difficulties that they faced in their lives as immigrants. And I thought it was a nice story. It was told well in terms of the narrative. I thought the cooking was fun. I wish it was a little longer.
I did too. And that the price that I paid for it.
Yeah, and that there was a few more, cooking sections and some more things to cook. But other than that, no complaints. Like, I think it was a fun little play.
I agree. I would basically echo what you just said. I think it's also like it's that hard balance of immigrants with trying to gel with the society that they're part of, but also trying to retain their own culture and trying to get that balance. And also they're trying to raise their son in a new environment.
Right.
Because, like, it's not super spoilers, but like at the start, they're contemplating whether to stay in Canada or whether to go back to India because she's pregnant. And they decide to stay because they feel like their son will have more opportunities.
Right.
And so that's a large part of the story is them, their like interactions with their son and how being immigrants makes that more of a different experience.
Right, because they come from one generation where they have immigrated, and so they grew up in India and with that culture and are now transplants here, but their son is growing up as a native Canadian with Indian heritage, and so like that sort of first generation to second generation gap. And I think that it was was a nice story.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I also feel like for the price tag, it was like I got it for just over £10, and it was like £13 full price, and it's only like a 2 to 3 hour game at most, and so it's like just a little bit too expensive. I've come to the conclusion in my mind that if I want to support indie developers, I'm not always going to wait for a sale, especially if the game is £20 or less. Tinykin was like 21. Venba was 10 on sale, and I got a couple of other games that I'll talk about later that were about 17.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I save plenty of money on the sales that we go for because I'll tend to, especially on PlayStation, go for games that are like 70 or above % off. And so I'm saving tons of money that way. And indie games have definitely, for me, been better than a lot of AAA titles over the last like half decade.
Yeah.
And I would like to see them continue to produce those. So giving them the money that they need is probably a good idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And being able to give money to developers that are producing really good quality indie games that are not, shovelware, exactly. That's not Touch the Tortoise 73, where they're just really money grabs.
Bunny Jump 66.
Exactly. It's it's trying to find that balance between, and I think you're exactly right, saving money on the AAA games, because a lot of them have been just disappointing over the past few years. And yes, they're more expensive to produce these days because of technology and demands and whatever, but the way that they're made and under the dictates of the production companies or the shareholders and the
whole business
publication
model.
The publishers, that's who I'm trying to say, and that sort of thing, just trying to shove things out, and then they force their dev teams to work under really terrible conditions where it's just like work all the time to try to get something out the door.
I think they've now talked about like expanding the like writer strikes and stuff to include video games, which I think is a very good idea, because the video game industry puts so much pressure on their workers.
Yeah. And then you end up with things that feel subpar, and it's probably not really the development team's fault, but they take the blame for it because it's what they've put out, but it's at the pressure of these workhorse publishers and stockholders and things like that, who are like, we want profits, get this game out.
Yeah.
And you get things like
profits
Gollum,
over quality,
right?
Or Cyberpunk.
Or Cyberpunk, where it's like it's released and it's not done, and they didn't have the time or didn't take the time to make it into what it needed to be in order to be good. So, being, like you said, just being able to support some of your smaller development teams that hopefully don't work that way and are just trying to tell the stories that they want to tell and make the games that they want to make. And it really shows in a lot of the indie titles, I think. So anyway, that was Venba, I guess, for both of us. What was your next foray this month?
Untitled Goose Game. I will give a shout out to Mr. Exonovant at Square One Games for another great set of guides.
Yes.
If you're playing Untitled Goose Game and you're struggling with some of the speedruns, definitely go check those out. But yeah, it was fun. It was irreverent and cheeky and naughty and fun. Honk, honk, baby.
Honk. Yeah.
And being British and it being set in like a quintessential British village or town, I was like, yeah, I understand these references. Yep, I know exactly who these people are. It's just fun, just to run around. It took a little while to get the controls down because there's like trying to like put your head down to be able to go through small holes or like pick things up without picking the wrong thing up while being chased.
Yeah.
Did have some moments where I was like, I need to play this a little bit more just to get the muscle memory as to what I need to do. But yeah, I like the art style. None of the speedruns were too bad. All the like challenges to do certain things, like lock someone in a garage, and several other things. I don't want to like go into too much detail.
Collect the basket full of these items and have a picnic and little things like that. I think the speed runs were, you had to do all of those little tasks in under a certain amount of time.
I think it was 7 minutes. You have to do it. So when you like restart the checkpoint, it like starts you at the beginning of the game, but in the area that you're in, and you have to complete all the tasks on the checklist for that area before the church bells ring. And I think it's 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you have to do each area in 7 minutes, and some are easier than others.
Right.
I think the one I struggled with the most was the back garden section, because I kept having slight little glitches with items where it was like I'd push them through one side of the fence, and then the woman would do the fence up and chuck them back through the hole.
Right, yeah.
With the door coming up. And I'm like,
yeah.
Damn you.
Yeah, I that one was the one that I struggled the most with, too, when I did it earlier this year. It was like getting those items from that one section into the other section without the woman knocking them back across, like you said, or her catching you and you dropping them, or the guy, if you were taking them around the other way, the guy catching you and throwing it back over. It's like, ah! So.
But yeah, it was fun. It was different. It was fun. I would recommend.
Yeah. Another good indie title. So my next one was not an indie title. It was God of War, the 2018, I'd say, soft reboot. It is a continuation from 3. There's definitely the character of Kratos bears the scars of his experiences in the original trilogy. But you don't really need to know anything about the first 3 games in order to enjoy God of War, the 2018 version. I don't think. Cool. I don't think. I think it benefits a little bit from knowing that past, at least a synopsis of it, but you don't really need to have played them in order to be able to play this game. The mechanics are very different. As a reminder for folks who have not listened to previous podcasts, I played God of War 3 last year, and it was the only one of the original trilogy that I've played. So I didn't play 1 or 2. I jumped into 3, and I didn't love it as much as I hoped that I was going to. The mechanics were really fun. It was a really good, beat 'em up kind of a game. But I really didn't like Kratos, the character, as much as I wanted to in that game. I think
maybe it might be coming through just because you played 3 and so you didn't have his like whole journey from 1 to 2.
Yeah, that I think that might be. Yeah, I agree. I think that might have been, I didn't see all of the crap that he had been through, and so the amount of rage that he had, and just the gore and the terrible ways in which he murdered people didn't feel exactly right. And so I think that there were some things maybe about the story that I didn't quite understand or didn't quite gel with me. But I will say, talking about the 2018 version, I really like his character a lot better in that game. It feels like he's really learned from that experience that he had in 1, 2, and 3. And that has shaped his character into someone who is, at the same time, very wise, but also, I think, overly cautious or overly hesitant to do what needs doing or to accept who he is, right? He's sort of in denial of who he is in the beginning, and that's because he wants to leave his past behind, and it's because he wants to not repeat the mistakes that he's made before and wants to have a new life. And I think that's a really interesting starting point for a character arc. And the majority of the story takes place with him and his son Atreus, and boy and their relationship developing, and both of their characters developing over the course of the game as things start to happen and they get thrust back into this life that Kratos didn't want to have and didn't want his son to have, but now it's come to catch up with them. I think it was a really interesting character piece and a really interesting story that was presented. Obviously, the combat was really good. I liked the changes that they made to the combat. It felt more, it's weird to say it felt more 3D. I mean, God of War 3 was 3D. Like, it wasn't a 2D side-scroller or anything, but it felt more like you were in
it felt
the
like
character.
You had more space, like there was less arena, or bigger arenas.
Yeah, it felt more like a third-person action game than a beat-em-up.
Yeah,
I guess is the difference that I'm looking at. And there was a lot more puzzle solving and traversal based stuff. It had an open world, which I both like and didn't like. I thought that it didn't necessarily need to have that open world because it was a linear story. It wasn't 100% necessary, and it elongated the game as you were going around trying to collect all the things and open all the chests, because a lot of them you had to solve different puzzles for and use different tools that you unlocked during the game, to be able to go back to those areas and then open up things. And so it made it a little bit more kind of Metroidvania style.
Okay.
In terms of being able to, I can't get to this place now. I need something else to be able to open up that path, or to cut off these vines from this chest so that I can open it. I'll need another tool, come back later. So it had that sort of feel to some of the sections of the open world.
Does it feel like it's that kind of modern trope where we can make it open world because we've got the processing power to do so in our game, so let's do it because everybody else is doing it, rather than it feels like it needs it for the story?
Yeah, I don't.
Or do you think they wanted
to
try and distance themselves a little bit more from the original trilogy, and so they wanted to expand the world a bit more?
Yeah, I think the reason why I don't 100% dislike the open world sequences is that, number one, they were well constructed, and you did have that sense of, okay, I need to come back to this place to get the, once I have such and such of an upgrade and able to get through here. And it felt like there was a little bit more to it than just walking around getting collectibles. So that was good. And it did help add some sense of scale to the world, because it's supposed to be Midgard and like the whole country, or the whole area of Midgard that you're supposed to be in. And then you go to some other realms as well. And
Midgard is our realm, right?
Yes. And I think that if it didn't have that sense of scale, it would feel a little bit more like the area was too small.
Do you also feel like because we're like trophy and achievement hunters and we feel like we've got to do everything in the area that detracts from it a bit as well? Because you feel like you've forced yourself to open all the chests to get all the things you need to do all the stuff.
Sure.
Whereas someone who isn't necessarily trophy hunting might enjoy the open world for what it is, but not feel so worn down with it a little bit.
Right, like I have to get all the things. Maybe, like I feel like it wasn't too much, I guess is what I'm trying to get at is I don't know that it necessarily needed that. I think they could have gotten the sense of scale just by traveling through these different locations and having these nice sweeping shots of how large the area is and that sort of thing. I think that they would have gotten that point across just fine without it being open world and being explorable.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it was bad either, right? Like if you're going to do an open world area, it wasn't a bad model. It wasn't too much, in my opinion. It wasn't too samey. Like there were different things that you were doing, and so it mixed it up enough so that it didn't feel like, okay, I trudge here, I do this, I trudge here, I do that. It was diversity of gameplay enough, and I think spread out enough throughout the story because they had those kind of soft locks on different areas where it's like, okay, I can't get here until I progress the story a little farther and get some upgrades. So it felt like it was spread out enough that it was okay.
Do you feel like it would have felt worse if all of those areas had been available from the start, and so you'd end up doing a lot more open world before going into the story?
Yeah.
Further.
Yeah, I think that it benefited from spreading it out throughout the game, and I think that like keeping you invested in the story that was being told and not taking you out of that story to go hunt collectibles for 35 hours, it was good because the real investment for me was that story, the central conflict of the game, the character work, being invested in Kratos, being invested in Atreus, being invested in some of the other characters, that was the core of it. And to break for too long from that to just walk around and do random things, I think would have detracted from it. And they did a fairly good job of keeping you invested in things and having interesting stuff as you were walking around, because different characters would comment on different things and say things, and Kratos would tell a story, or one of the other characters would tell a story about a certain area or a thing as you were walking around, and you got different bits at different points as you're going around. And so that helped keep it grounded in the narrative, I think. And so I think they did it well as they could. I don't think it was 100% necessary for it to be open world, but if they were going to do it that way, I think they did it well.
Nice.
I really love the story. I really love Christopher Judge. We love him from Stargate. And so the voice actor that did Kratos' voice in the first games did a good job. So not to say any detriment to him, like that actor did a fine job with the Kratos of the past, but the Kratos of the now, like Chris Judge is just so perfect for that.
He's our Kratos.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm not going to play 3 because I don't enjoy that gory, really gory gameplay. And you know me, and so you're like, well, I would maybe steer clear of that. And so
it's a little brutal. Whereas I think there is still some gore, and it is still like that visceral feel of Kratos's ripping things apart and just beating the crap out of stuff. Like he is still himself, and it is still very much
But it's
that.
not quite on the same level
No,
of
it's
brutality.
exactly. It's not like choking people with their own entrails, and you know.
I'm good. Moving on.
Yeah, it is not on the same level. It has enough of it to still get across that like brutality, that force of just barbarian rage that Kratos is.
I would like to rage.
You know, and yeah, and is very much his character. But it's not over the top, I don't think.
Nice.
So
you're looking forward to Ragnarok?
I'm looking forward to Ragnarok. I will probably play it at some point soonish, especially now that I've got a PS5.
That's nice. So do I.
Last month
that was a whole thing.
Yeah. Last month was the month that we bought PS5s, our first console of the current generation.
Yeah. 3 years after release.
I know.
That's the longest time I've waited.
Yep.
Because I bought an Xbox 360 2 years after release, but I think that was the longest I'd waited.
So, in any case, we got PS5s, and so I'm excited to play Ragnarok on my PS5. I still have a backlog of things that are PS4 games, so I am still going to be.
The thing with PS5 is all PS4 games are backwards compatible.
Yeah, exactly, and so it'll be cool to transition to that console. I still have a bunch of older things that I'm going to be working through, and I know you do too. But it will be nice to sprinkle in some newer titles to that and to be able to play them on current gen hardware, which is great. So God of War 2018, really good game. I'm looking forward to you playing it so that we can talk a little bit more about the story and stuff. Yeah, because I don't want to spoil anything for you or anybody else who hasn't played it, because the story is at least for me, the story is the hook. The gameplay is also very good. So if someone is just playing it for the gameplay, that's totally valid. But for me, the story was key, so I don't want to spoil stuff for you, but definitely a recommend. It's like one of those flagship PlayStation titles, and it deserves that status. So
sweet.
Indeed.
So I think my next game, I believe, is a AAA. It's a Plague Tale Innocence. I wasn't 100% sure about this one going in because you told me certain things, and I was like, but it was good.
Is it gonna be too squick for me? I thought it would not be. I thought you'd be okay.
No, it's the main plot of that game is interesting and creepy.
Yeah.
But like, it's a good story. I like the protagonist and her brother and the people that they interact with over the story. It was gory in places, but not enough that it sounds like what God of War was like, where it's like it's enough that you get the point, but it's not too much that it feels like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I like the setting because it's set during the Black Death in France in the 14th century, I think, or 13th century. I can't remember if it was 12 or 13. The years,
right?
I think it's quick history check.
I thought it was in the
it's
1300s.
1300s, yeah. 14th century. So yeah, I like the setting. It's all like knights and that kind of era. The mechanics
very
for that
medieval,
game,
right?
Yeah, the mechanics for the game work really well. Like, it's got really good stealth mechanics. Your main offensive weapon is a sling, but they do many different things with it as well. It's like a utility item, and there was there's some alchemy / rudimentary chemistry involved, which I like because I have a chemistry degree, and so I was like, ooh, chemistry. This is like me, but several hundred years ago.
Yep.
And so the being able to craft different alchemical items to enable you to do different things, like set people on fire and knock people out. It was well made. Like, it's good when a AAA game plays the way that it should and isn't like, this could have been better. The main plot centers around a particular family and the connection to what's going on with the Black Death. I just I just enjoyed it, and it wasn't too long. Like, it didn't feel like they overdid it. They didn't pad it out to make it longer. Like, it's only like 20 hours to get the plat, and so it doesn't feel like they extended it for the need of like, we need this game to be longer, because I sometimes feel like they do that with AAA games where it's like, it needs to be 40 hours or it needs to be 50 hours, and so they could have easily made that more open world and it would have detracted from the game.
Yeah. Like, I think stealth games really benefit from being open enclosed spaces, if that makes sense.
Having
right?
Like an open space within a closed environment.
Yes.
I think especially like Dishonored, right? It's like, here's a building you need to get into. This is the space that you're in, but there's lots of ways of traversal and entrance. And so it feels big, but it's not open world. It's just big enough to make it feel like you've got many options.
Exactly. Right. That's the crux of it. Is it needs to be big enough to allow you to have different means of approaching the situation, so it feels like a puzzle that you're solving through stealth and through the tools that you have at your disposal. But it's not this huge open world where you can kind of go anywhere and do anything. It's a very linear experience that you're going through this area to that area to this next one, but it has enough openness within each sequence that allows you different options to get through it.
I would say that like Plague Tale is a lot more linear than Dishonored, but in a good way. Like, it felt like that fit the story very well.
Yeah.
Especially when you're like, the characters are like teenagers and young children, and so having them try and traverse vast areas within game doesn't make sense,
right?
Because it's like you try to drag a 6-year-old around like a couple of miles of area, and they're going to be tired.
The entire city of Paris,
exactly.
Right?
Like that doesn't really work. But no, I like the setting, the mechanics worked really well, the characters were great, and I'm looking forward to the sequel, which I can now play. Because I have the ability to. Because you played it on Xbox, but you streamed it. You used the
Yes. I used the cloud.
The cloud streaming for X to 1. And you said it was good, but it wasn't the best experience you could have had with the game.
Yeah, because it especially with the cutscenes, it had to refresh the frame rate a lot. And so, that was definitely noticeable with the streaming, but for the most part, the game played just fine on my one doing the cloud streaming. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to playing it again on PlayStation and seeing the difference with playing it on the hardware that it was made for.
What I mean is, I'm looking forward to playing the sequel, but I'm also going to replay Innocence again on PlayStation.
Yep,
me probably too. Twice.
Yep,
because I have both. I think I bought the PS4 version on sale, and then the PS5 version was PS Plus.
Right,
and so I have both. I don't want to auto pop. I want to play through them again.
Yeah.
Again.
Again.
All of the agains. What was your next game?
My next game is not really a game, I would say. My next game was a visual novel called Synergia. It is something that I picked up because I was really into like cyberpunky kind of things, and it was like it's like a cyberpunky kind of setting, and it's like it was, you know, a story about a person and a robot, and there's like a love story, and it talks a lot about, you know, the what makes someone sentient, right? Or what's the difference, like what's that line between being a person and not being a person and having rights and that sort of stuff. And I like those kinds of stories, very kind of Detroit Become Human-esque.
Yeah, it's like
in terms of
Turing
its themes.
test type.
Yeah.
Where it's like blurring the lines between
right. Yeah.
AI and sentience and, or true sentience.
Yeah, and so it had a lot of those themes. I would say it was not my favorite story.
That's
right?
A shame.
Which is a shame, because like the entire thing was a story. There were a couple of like choice points that the story then played out in a different way based on some of the things that you chose, which was nice. So it did have the teeniest of bits of what might be considered gameplay to it, but it was more like a visual novel with a couple of choose your own adventure moments. You know.
Fair enough.
So it's one of those things where I feel like I don't typically play those types of things. Like I don't think I've ever played a straight up visual novel before. Like I've played some Telltale games and like Life is Strange
I don't know whether I have or not.
And that sort of thing, but all of those do have gameplay elements and choice-based elements and that sort of thing that make them, in my opinion, that they tip that scale over into a game versus a visual novel or something that's not a game. And so I would say Synergia is not a game, but it still had a platinum, which I still did get. But
it looks like I've played 2 visual novels, according to TA.
Which games?
Venba and Coffee Talk are considered visual novels.
Huh. I would disagree with that because I think there are gameplay elements there.
Yeah, it's the making cups of coffee and cooking food.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, Overcooked is not a visual novel.
No. I mean, Venba is very, very much dumbed down, but there is some variance.
Yes,
like
there
you
are
can put
elements.
the ingredients in different orders.
Mm-hmm. And you can mess it up, right? Like,
yeah. I think Coffee Talk is like visual novel-esque.
Yeah. Yeah, I would
TA
say...
and their genres, I feel are off slightly on a fair few games we've played lately, because I've gone, how is this not a puzzle game? Or how is this not a platformer? And it's like, it's an adventure game.
And it's like, there are definitely things that straddle that line where it's like, there isn't much that's going on there, but I think both of those games have enough that you're actually mechanically doing, you know.
Well, Coffee Talk for sure, because it's like that challenge mode where you just make coffee over and over again.
Exactly. Like, to me, I think the line is, could this have just been in a book? Right?
Yeah.
Could this have been a book and been a very similar experience? And I think if it was like, for Synergia, if it's like a manga or like a comic book, right, where you still have those visuals, because it had really nice visual style in terms of that cyberpunk atmosphere, and it had some good visual stuff going on there. And so I think if it was a comic book where you still had those art panels, it could have easily just been that. And not been a game because basically you're just pressing A to turn the page. is what that is. Whereas with Coffee Talk, you're not going to get the same experience, or Venba, you're not going to get the same experience because you aren't actually making the food or making the coffee. Like, there are mechanical things to do.
Yeah, it's not like
within that.
Press A to coffee.
Right. Yeah,
or
exactly.
Press A to curry.
Exactly. There were mechanical aspects that's not just pressing one button.
Yeah, and it was like if you did things in the wrong order, it would mess up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so, to me, that's my personal definition. Obviously, other people see things differently, but that's my personal line there between what's a game and has enough of those mechanical gameplay elements to it.
Yeah, it's like a visual novel is effectively press A to story.
Yes, exactly. And there, like I said, there were certain choice points, but I don't think there were enough of them that I don't think there were enough of them to tip it over into something that's more like a Telltale type game to me. So,
visual novel, not point and click adventure.
Yeah. So, Synergia, if you like visual novels and you like sort of the cyberpunk type settings and you like that kind of AI versus human and where's the line there, and you like romance, because it was also a romance type story, you might like Synergia. I think there were maybe some translation issues as well. I feel like it was not made by a native English speaking development team. I don't know that 100% for sure, but I got that feeling. And so I think there may have been some translation issues. There are just some parts where the wording is clunky, and it gives that feel of like this was not your first language that it was being translated into, but there weren't too many of those moments to make it too much of a distraction. I think it could have done with some fixes to some of the pacing, because it felt like sometimes the pace moved pretty quick and then other times it was just nothing was happening. And so I think if they could have balanced the pacing of the story and maybe fleshed out a few of the characters a little bit more, it would have hit better for me. But as it was, I would say it was kind of an average to a little above average kind of a little story, set in a pretty interesting cyberpunk setting. So
nice.
That was that.
My next game, in a completely different setting, like fantasy, fairy tale esque, is Wytchwood. So Wytchwood is like it almost feels like a Don't Starve kind of game, where it's like there's lots of crafting and making of different things and different tiers of making different things. And basically it's like you're this witch character who is tasked with collecting 12 wicked souls to give to the devil, who's effectively a goat, to wake up a sleeping maiden. Okay. And so you have to go to these different areas, do different tasks, and collect the souls of these wicked individuals. So there's 12 different creatures that you need to acquire their souls by different means, but they all requiring crafting different things. And so it's like you need to craft traps and potions and strange things. Like some like talismans and effigies and other odd things. But yeah, it was fun, and like trying to figure out where you needed to go in certain sections to get certain items. They have it's like this. There's a teleportation circle. Like there's these doors that appear in each area that you can unlock, and it takes you to this hub that's in like a between space, so you can go to the other areas that you've been to already, which made backtracking a lot easier, because it's like not all items. Each area has like different items that you need, and so it was like I need to find these 3 different items to make a potion that I need. But one of the items is in the area you're in, and then one of them's in the field area that you need to go to. And so instead of having to run like across the map to get back to that area, you can just teleport and go to like the central hub, which was really nice. Like I was very grateful for that, because one of my little complaints is the frame rate seemed off. I don't know whether it's like it was. I played it on Xbox One, and I don't know whether it was enhanced for PS5 and Series X, because it just didn't quite flow well enough. It was very jerky, the way that you were running around.
Yeah, the frame rate felt off, or it felt
or
like
the animation wasn't quite right, or a bit of both. And so it just felt a little bit jerky in places.
Yeah.
Which makes it a little bit hard to focus on what you're doing. Especially when moving at speed.
Yeah.
The main character's kind of fun. It's like a witch, but you can't see her face. She's got a cauldron on her head and like bird feet. And I'm like, okay, this seems like very Baba Yaga.
Bird feet.
Bird feet. But no, it's like story-based, crafting-based. All of the achievements and trophies are story-related, so you can't miss any of them. You just have to work through. It's for acquiring each of the souls, basically.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, if you like crafting games, I would definitely recommend. And the art style, I liked. It's very kind of like Don't Starve, but with more color. I will say it did get a little bit repetitive towards the end, because I did play it all in like one go. It's about 20 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm kind of ready to be done, because the later souls are like, you need higher tier items, and they require the smaller tier items to make. And so it was a bit more backtracking to get the things that I needed.
Yep.
And so you'd have to go to like 6 different areas instead of 3 different areas. And it's like, okay, I'm ready to be done now.
Yeah.
But it was fun, and I enjoyed it.
Good. Yeah, that sounds like one that I think I would enjoy.
I would maybe try and play it on PS5 if you can.
Yeah, see if that fixes some of those animation frame rate.
Because I did watch a video online. I was like, oh, I might use a guide. And then I went, well, they're all story-related achievements, so no. I think the person that was playing it on PC, and the frame rate was fine.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like it's like my Xbox One was struggling.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good deal. My next game was a game that I'd played before. So this was the first one, and well, not the only one, but one of 2 that I played this month that were things that I have played before in the past and was playing again on PlayStation. And it's Far Cry 3.
Woo.
And Far Cry 3 is...
Do you know the definition of insanity?
Yeah, it's playing Far Cry 3 for the 3rd time.
Yeah, I've done it as well.
Yep, because I played the original version on 360, and then I played the classic version on Xbox One, and then this time, the one that I completed in August was Far Cry 3 Classic on PS4, which I played on my PS5, but yeah, the PS4 version.
I mean, it's still...
And, I mean, it's Far Cry 3, right? I played it before a couple times. It's got a good story. I don't like the main character. I think it's
Jason.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting look into that idea of what will a person do and what might a person become when put under stress. Right? When put under the stress of being in a very unfamiliar situation where the consequences for certain behaviors are not the same as in a civilized world. So
it's almost like Paradise Lost, or like Lord of the Flies, kind of like when the rules of society aren't being enforced. What what are you really capable of, and where do you draw
Right.
your boundaries?
Yes, and who do you become within that kind of a situation? Absolutely, it was definitely has both. I think that feel of those stories that you've mentioned. Where it's this person who is from, I think fairly upper middle class to affluent.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel like their parents paid for the holiday.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like they're these early like young people who are on vacation, and then they find themselves being taken by this group of people on this island, and are now in a survival situation where there really is no law.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting look at that kind of a story. But I definitely I don't like Jason as a character. I think that the game plays pretty well still, even years later.
Yeah.
I think it
The
still
core mechanics
plays.
of Far Cry games
Yeah,
just work.
they do. The
And
like
work well.
fire and like fire spreading, the gunplay,
Takedowns.
the takedowns, the like wingsuits and the gliders and whatnot. I will say the driving and whatnot is not their strong point.
The driving has always been bad ever since
Yeah.
Far Cry 2.
Yeah. The driving is not a strong point, but it's also not really 100% necessary. Like you can travel around on foot or by other means perfectly fine. It just takes a little bit longer, you know. And I think sometimes like the detection mechanics are a little bit wonky, where I was like immediately seen no matter what I tried to do. And stealth was a little bit difficult in certain situations.
Especially with the dogs, they're overpowered.
Yes, in that game.
They
In
see
3,
you
they
way too
absolutely
easily, and
Yep.
they kill you way too easily.
Yep, and it's hard. Like, I don't think you can do a takedown on them either. So I think it's really difficult to take them out. So when you're in an area that has dogs, it's just very hard to do that sequence with stealth, which is not necessary. Like, you do not play in stealth. You don't have to. There's only like one trophy for doing an outpost with stealth. But
I think you need to maybe do 2 or 3 because of the Tatao stuff. It,
right,
unlocks one of them.
That's possible. But I enjoy stealth gameplay, and it makes
When
it
given the
easier
opportunity,
when
we
given the
do.
opportunity. Yeah. I like to try to do it that way, and it makes it easier if you can do it in stealth, or at least in stealth long enough to be able to take out the alarms.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have all these reinforcements coming and making it just this cluster of bad. So I think I had a little bit of problems with the stealth mechanics. They could have been better. I don't love the main character and the second villain. So Voss is amazing. Love him.
Voss is
He's
one
great.
of my favorite villains in the entire Far Cry series.
Yeah, like he's really, really well done, well acted, well written. He's really good. But the second villain, Hoyt, is definitely less interesting, and so
Agreed.
it makes the second, or I guess the last, I think it was probably about the last third of the game, feel anticlimactic after you've dealt with Voss.
Yeah.
So
I always felt that way as well.
Yeah, it doesn't ride out on a high note, unfortunately. Nope. And
what it almost felt like to me is that they spent a lot of time on that 2/3 at the start. And then it was kind of like, oh, we kind of ran out of time a bit on this. So it's a bit more linear and less nuanced and less depth to it. It's kind of like, we'll just get it done. Yeah, sure,
right.
It's fine.
Yeah. That may very well be.
And that damn helicopter section can go do one.
The helicopter section at the end where you're trying to fire on a bunch of these people that have rocket launchers and it feels like there's about 10,000 of them coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
I was like, come on. Ugh. And then the checkpoint was way back before you even got even in the helicopter, and I was like, this is terrible. But that was my personal struggle. I feel like that might not be everybody's experience, but that was my personal struggle there at the end, where it took me like 5 or 6 tries to get it done.
Still would recommend the game. It's definitely one of the best
absolutely.
Far Cries.
It's one of the best Far Cries, hands down. You know, it kind of started that mechanic of going to the radio tower and unveiling part of the area, you know, on the map, and then you see the rest of the things that are available for you to do there, and that sort of thing. And that kind of model that they used for a lot of Ubisoft games around that time and forward, you know.
Yeah, I think that's
Far
actually
Cry 3
originated in Assassin's Creed.
I think so.
Points, and so they put that in.
And they put that in Far Cry.
It's just that's the first Far Cry with it in.
Yeah. And so there are a lot of things that are really good about it. You know, the hunting, I liked upgrading all of your pouches and that sort of thing with the different animal skins, and crafting the different like healing syringes and stuff that you can use. Mechanically, the game is really fun. And I think it's one of those where it's open world, but it's not so big that it feels like it's too much and overwhelming. It's like a good size. You don't have to do
everything either.
That's true, which is nice. And so it's open, and I feel like it strikes that good balance, which, you know, for me is like there's a good amount to do, but it doesn't feel overwhelming and like it's too much. And so... yeah, I really like Far Cry 3. Apparently, I've done it 3 times. So, you know, it's good. Is it the best game ever made? No, it's not. Like, there are definitely some places where it shows its age a bit, in terms of how some of the stuff works. But still, overall, a good recommend.
Nice. So my last Xbox game that I completed is Citizen Sleeper. And for me, that was the best game that I played in August. It just... so it's like it's a dice mechanic game where it's like your success or failure is based on a dice roll. You start the day with... I mean, you talked about this before when you played it, but it's like... when you start the day, you get a certain number of dice. You have different... I think there's 6 different skills that you have with different... and you can have up to a +2 modifier in them.
Yep.
And so if you get a 6, that's an automatic success. If you have a 5 or a 4... wait a minute. So a 6 is an automatic success. A 5 is you get neutral or good.
Right.
If you have a 3 or a 4, there's a 50% chance of neutral, 25 of good, and 25 of bad. And then 1 or 2 is 50-50 of neutral or bad. And like bad means you fail and it has a consequence. And then medium is you succeed, but there's a lesser consequence. So it'll be like because you have like you basically play as like a robot, and you have like power and condition, and for those like middle ones, it's usually like you'll lose some power or you'll lose some condition if you get a medium success. And so the mechanics work really well. You can choose between 3 different versions. One of them is like an engineer. One of them is like I feel like they're like a cargo hauler type. They're like a strong a stronger model, and one of them's like a God, my brain's gone blank.
Like a hacker.
Yeah, like an influence based, like one that
like
interacts with people. But they made it so that you don't have to choose a particular one to be able to like play the game. It just gives you a little bit of a head start in one or two stats. And you start off with one negative stat and one stat that's +1. And so that kind of affects your early game. But I like the setting and the art style were really good. There's loads of NPCs that you interact with, and they all have their different stories that you can follow through to different ends depending on how well you do in certain areas or different choices that you make at certain points. I'm not going to go into any details about that because that's like the core of the game is the story. And there's several different endings that you can get. Some of them it's like you choose that ending and then you're like sent back to your previous checkpoint, or it's basically like if you leave the place, then you're sent back. But if something happens to someone else, then that keeps that as like canon for what you've done.
Yeah, and you move forward still on the space station.
Yeah. I also like the fact that you can become self-sufficient by the end of the game, which I really enjoy. It feels like the developers are like giving you kudos for like playing their game well. They're like, you've made good decisions, you've explored as far as you can, and so now we're rewarding you with the ability to be able to like, I don't need to make loads of money to be able to buy food or to be able to buy medicine because you need to take this special drug, otherwise you basically lose the ability to function over time, and so you get less and less dice each day, which just cripples you.
Yeah, you can do less and less actions each day because you don't have enough dice to do more.
And so being able to have as many dice as possible is just really nice, because it makes you feel like you're actually playing the game properly and not just like scratching a living. I'm really glad I played it. I'm really looking forward to the sequel that they've announced whenever that comes out.
Yes.
So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. 5 out of 5. Like, it's not the best game ever made, but I had a really good experience with it.
Yes, and if you like those kinds of like, it felt very TTRPG.
Yes.
Right? And if you like those kinds of games, it's a really good one. And if you like something like sci-fi set in space, you know, if you're like a Starfinder kind of a person, right?
It almost made me think of Blade Runner as well.
Yeah.
That kind of dystopian sci-fi, different casts of society where it's like the lower people are really struggling to survive. But the higher ups are like, they're doing well, but at the expense of other people.
Yes, the sort of corporations running everything and that sort of stuff. Definitely felt like that kind of setting. So it's like, if you like dice-based, like tabletop RPG style games, and you like that kind of a setting, this hits a lot of those notes. So, sweet. My next thing was also, I think, an indie game. I don't know. It was produced by Netflix, I believe, which is weird, but it makes sense based on what it is. Is this game that came out last year called Immortality, and it is
odd. That's it. Game described. Yes, it is. Moving on.
I really enjoyed it. It's one of those things that like is definitely not going to be everybody's game.
Not mine.
But it's definitely going to be some people's kind of thing. So it's a live action filmed. It's using live action footage, right? So it's not animated like most games are. It is made up entirely of live action clips. And what it is it's basically found footage from 3 unreleased movies and related media clips that were made over several decades. I think a couple of them were set back in the 80s, and then there was one that was like 1999.
Yeah.
And they were, all 3 of them starred this starlet named Marissa Marcel, and all 3 of them were never released. And the idea is something happened to Marissa. Go back through these clips and find out what happened to her. And there were like supposed to be clues as to that you could piece together as to what happened to this actress based on the clips that you found in this footage. And the way that it was done is you would see a clip and then you would click on some aspect of the clip, so like a person's face or an object or an animal or a piece of the background, like a light or a chair or a clock. And then it would take you to another clip that may be from the same movie, but might be from one of the other 2 movies that had a similar aspect. So had the same person. If you clicked on their face, it would have the same actor. Or if you clicked on an object, it would have a similar object. So if you clicked on a clock on the wall, you might get a watch on someone's wrist. And so it told the story of all 3 of the filmings of these 3 movies very non-linearly, because you could bounce from one to another to another to another, and then back to the first one. And so it was interesting because you were getting like 7 stories. You were getting the story that was being told in each one of the 3 movies. Then you were getting the behind the scenes of each of the 3 movies, because some of the clips were the interactions between the actors and the, or the writers or the directors, right? Talking about a scene. And then you were also getting this thread that wove through all of them, which was about these immortal beings that were kind of pushing everything along. And so that's where it gets a little bit weird. So buried within some of the clips, you had to rewind the footage at a certain speed in order to, and then you would see another set of footage overlaid with the current footage, and it would be these other beings, right, that were guiding the events in some way behind the scenes. And so it was like this supernatural aspect of, there are these beings that have done something to cause what happened within the 3 films to happen, within the filming of the 3 films to happen. And so it was like, this one person died, and then, something else, we don't know what happened to this person, and we don't know what happened to that person. And you're kind of piecing it together as you go along based on the clips that you find, and then the clips within the clips that you find. So it was told in a very interesting way, with it being very nonlinear, and no one's playthrough is going to be the same, because it clicks through the clips at kind of a random way. So it's like, if I click on a person's face, it's going to take me to another clip of that person. But if you click on that same person's face, it's probably not going to take you to the same clip that it took me to. Right? So it was a really interesting kind of a thing. If you like sort of things that have that supernatural bent with kind of like demons or like demons, gods, it's a little bit unclear what these beings are. Then
beings is a good descriptor.
It might be interesting for you, but it's also like it's just weird. It was a weird thing. I enjoyed it a lot. I felt like it was a little bit tedious getting all the achievements because you had to find every single piece of footage, and there were certain ones that it was like, I don't know how to get this clip. And so I kind of had to look up some guides of like, okay, which clip am I missing and what is it, so that I can try to click on things that will take me to that clip. So it's like, does it have a bowl of fruit, or does it have a flower, or does it have something that's unusual that I can click on in something other clip to get me to get to that
It gives me a higher chance on the RNG scale of finding that one that I'm missing.
Of finding that one that I'm
not
missing.
getting the other one that I've had 17 times.
Exactly. I swear I got some of the same clips like 100 times. It was crazy. So collecting all the clips was a little bit tedious, but other than that, I think the core aspect of the game was really interesting, and I did find myself invested in like, well, what are these movies about, and what happened to these people, and who are these beings, and what did they do? So it was an interesting story in that respect. So, if that sounds interesting to you, you might check it out. And the reason why I played it last month was it had been on my list of things that I wanted to play on Games Pass, and it was leaving Games Pass last month. So I was like, better go ahead and get it done.
Makes sense.
Yep.
My next game is also my last, and it's the only one that I played on PlayStation last month.
Nice.
Which is Astro's Playroom. And it was also my first platinum on PS5.
Woo!
So I think it was a good showcase of the capabilities of the DualSense controller.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the parts with Astro in them, but the suits that you get, some were kind of frustrating to control.
Yes.
The rolly ball was especially frustrating for me for some reason, with the little touchpad controls. Yep. It was just tedious, especially on the icy bits, where it's just like you just slide off, and you're like, you've got to tap it to stop. And I was like, please stop, stop.
Yep.
And then because you tapped it, but your finger did an extra tiny little movement, it would move it again.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is annoying. And the monkey bits where it's like you're trying to switch hands and you've got to use the sensor within the controller. Like my mum walked past me while I was playing and said, "Are you okay? What are you doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a motion sensor." I'm flailing my arms around.
Yeah.
She's like, "That'll be a good way to put your back out." And I was like, "I know. I don't have to do it for very long."
Yeah. No, I played this game also last month. So because obviously we both got PS5s and it came with them, and so we played it. I feel exactly the same way. Like I thought it was really cute. Astro's really cute, and the platforming sections were really well done.
As well. And
I like the music.
And the homage to PlayStation, and just
different PlayStation games and different just games in general.
It might not even be "Aren't we great?" It's like, look what we've done. We've done quite well.
Yeah, look at all this cool stuff. Look at all these cool things.
I will give another shout out to Exonovant. He has a guide for Astro's Playroom, and that really helped. There's also a DLC for the speed runs. They weren't too bad as far as speedruns went. The mechanics worked well for them.
And I thought it was interesting because it wasn't just speed running through the levels that you've already done.
No,
it was speed running
courses.
Through a special course that took elements of the levels that you've already done.
Yeah.
So, I agree. The speed runs were not too bad.
And there was only
they were kind of fun actually. To try to
That's
get your time down.
Us saying a speed run was fun.
I know, it's crazy. Uh, we're losing our minds a little bit, I think, because the speedruns were fun on like Goose Game and Astros.
Yep.
And we also kind of enjoyed the Far Cry 6 challenge run.
Yeah.
The stuff. So
that was yeah. I mean,
it's a weird moment.
To be fair, it's because we make such a good team.
It's true.
And that's why that went so well.
Mm-hmm.
And, me being able to run ahead of you and not get told off was nice.
Well, and also it played to the strengths of the game, which we'll talk about next month, which are the mechanics and not the story. So
yeah. But yeah,
that's to come later. But yeah, Astro's like I definitely agree with you that the suit sections were the weakest part for me.
And I will also say, like, it's cool that they have the DualSense. I don't really see the point, personally. Yeah. I'm just like, I'm not going to play any more games, probably, that have any of that kind of, like, interface stuff with the motion sensors in controllers are, like, my pet hate. Because I'd be playing Dark Souls, and then you'd randomly start doing emotes because the, like, sensor was like, oh, you've moved the controller. And it's like, no, I put it down to scratch my foot. And it's going, yeah, praise the sun. And I'm like...
And you're getting the crap beaten out of you in the meantime.
Yeah. And it's just like, what are you doing?
Yep. I've just walked off a cliff.
Yeah. And also it's like, I don't know in what game I'm going to play where I'm going to blow on the controller to make it do something.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that.
And that was another moment of my parents looking at me like I've gone insane. I'm like, no, there's a sensor on it. Look.
Yeah, and where my cat's looking at me like, what are you doing to that? You're not going to do that to me, are you?
You're showing that controller more affection than you've shown me in the last 15 minutes.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, no, it was cool, and it was a nice showcase of the hardware. I think
Agreed.
I think you're right. Like, most games are not going to benefit from those kinds of controls.
I just want a controller that works well and is fairly robust.
Yes. I don't need to have gimmicks. Which is what some of it feels like, right? Like,
I understand trying to push the, like, technology boundaries, and if that enables them to make better controllers for the games that I want to play going forward, that's great.
Yeah.
But when it's like, you're putting extra stuff in my controller that could break, I don't know as I want it in there.
Right, or if it's going to
use power,
use extra power and that sort of stuff,
and reduce the battery life.
Mm-hmm.
I also will say one thing as well: my charger for my PS4 and my PS5 controllers are different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like
same.
They're different USB sizes, whereas I use a Series X controller for my Xbox One. It's the same,
and it's the same. Yeah, which I don't like them making something that then you have to buy another cable for.
Because I'm
right?
I'm fairly certain that you can use a PS4 controller on a PS5. So why would you? I know I have the charge cable available, but it's like it's older. It might break more easily. Like, why can I not use my PS5 charge cable that's new on my PS4 controller?
And the PS5 charge cable is so short.
It is.
It's really short, and I'm like, okay.
I'm going to have to now burn my eyeballs out being 15 inches from my screen so I can charge my controller.
Pull the console forward, or, lean forward on the thing if I want to play while it's charging instead of sit it down to charge, which is, obviously we play for longer periods of time than your average gamer might, So if you're only playing for an hour or two at a time, you're probably not going to have that issue. You'll be able to charge it up in between play sessions. But if you forget to charge it in between play sessions, or if you play for, 4, 5, 6 hours at a time, potentially, you're going to have to charge it in the middle, and it just becomes uncomfortable when the cable is not long enough. So
agreed.
That is annoying. But Astro's Playroom itself, I thought was fun.
Yes, I agree.
It's a really good,
it's a nice little freebie as well.
Yeah, exactly. Since it comes with the console and everybody who has a PS5 has access to it, there's really no reason not to play it because it's a very well made game.
Yeah.
So I had a couple more shorties this past month. I played a game called Iris Fall, which was a game that I got free. We got free from Games with Gold a few months ago. And it was another kind of short puzzle based game. I would say it reminded me of Alice in Wonderland a little bit, with this like girl and she's following a cat, but I would say it has more in common with a game called Contrast, if you've played that, that came out a long time ago. But it's using light and darkness in similar kinds of ways, where you can change the lighting and then move into another 2D space, and then traverse along and then come back out into the light, and you solve a bunch of puzzles that way. And you solve a lot of puzzles by manipulating light and dark and moving along different spaces of the terrain. And it was short, it was simple, the mechanics worked for what they were. It could have maybe been a little bit longer or a little bit more in depth in terms of some of the puzzles, but for what it was and for getting it for free, it was a perfectly acceptable little game.
I'm glad it wasn't a King's Bird.
You really hated that game.
It's just that I waste so much time on it before I realised it had an alt mode where I could make it so I was invulnerable to damage. Yeah. Game. That's my epitome of a Games with Gold waste of time.
Right. So yeah, it certainly didn't feel like a waste of time to me. It just, it's not the best game that was ever made. It's made very clearly by an indie company, and it shows, that because the mechanics don't work quite as well as they probably could, it's not quite as long or in depth as it probably could be, but it's good for what it is. And then the last game that I played this month is a game that I played before called Thomas Was Alone, which is a platformer where you control these little AIs that are in the form of quadrilaterals. And it's just got a lot of good humor. The narrator, it feels very kind of like Stanley Parable kind of narrator, where it's that a little bit upbeat British voiceover, and he does a really good job with it, just narrating the thoughts of all of these artificial intelligence cubes as they try to find their place in the world and break through the shackles of their programming and whatnot. And it was
Danny Wallace is the narrator, and he's the guy that does Sean Hastings' voice for Assassin's Creed.
Oh, nice. And so he did a nice job, and the humor is really good, and the platforming is really good, and it's got enough. It's always adding in those different elements. It's, I think, the hallmark of a good platformer for me, where it never feels stale, it never feels static, where you're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, which is what I think a platformer can be sometimes.
Yeah.
Where you're just doing similar jumps but more difficult or with more obstacles to overcome, right? Like this changes up the mechanics in every level. And there's 10 in every chapter, and there's 10 chapters with 10 levels in each chapter. And so with each one you're progressing and getting different abilities and doing different things and within the levels, which is really good. And I liked it when I played it before on Xbox, and so I got it to play again on PlayStation and really enjoyed it on a second playthrough. I think it's a really fun little platformer, especially if you like that kind of introspective humor, I guess is what I might call it. So that was the wrap up of my month, and I feel like we both had really good months. We played a good many things and some really good things for the most part.
Like I feel like I hit my backlog quite well. I've been trying to like push through my Xbox backlog, especially with like the changes that are coming up potentially that we talked about before. Now having a PS5, I think I'm shifting back to PlayStation for September because I have some milestones I want to hit. I want to hit 3,500 trophies and probably not in September, but getting prepared for my 75th plat. And so I'm just doing some work on that. I'm also like, we've been playing 2 longer open world games at the end of August with Far Cry and Phoenix. Immortals Phoenix Rising. I just call it Phoenix because it's easier.
Yep.
So I feel a little bit burnt out with those at the moment because it's Ubisoft. It's eaten a lot of hours of my life recently, especially with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I'm like, I'm going to have a little break, do a bit of fun. I'm also currently having 10 days off work, holiday, and so I don't want to be doing grindy stuff. I want to be having fun.
Right, yeah. I think that is one of the things that I've been thinking about. You know, last month felt really good. And to me, I think it was the diversity in different types of games I was playing. Because
I agree.
Like, Venba was a narrative puzzle game with cooking. And then God of War was an action-adventure game with a little bit of, like, open-world Metroidvania type stuff. Synergia was a visual novel. Far Cry 3 was an open-world game. An open-world first-person shooter. Immortality was a found footage weird thing. Iris Fall was a puzzle game. Astro's Playroom was a platformer, and then Thomas Was Alone was another little puzzle platformer.
Yeah.
And so it just felt like, and then like you said, we've been playing Far Cry 6 together.
Yeah. And that's a third-person shooter.
And that's a third-person shooter open world. And so it felt like I had a pretty good diversity of different things that I was playing last month. And I just feel like that really helps when you aren't playing too many of the same types of things over and over again. That little mix-up helps a lot.
I think what also helped me as well was deciding just to buy 4 games to play that month that I wanted to play, but also having enough time to work through like a few games on my backlog.
Balance, right? Balance is super important, because I think sometimes we get stuck in these patterns where it's like, okay, I'm hitting my backlog, so now all I can do is play my backlog, and maybe there are games that I want to be playing, but I can't because I have to play my backlog, and it's just these little holes that we dig ourselves into, where we're imposing these conditions upon ourselves that we don't have to, you know?
And I think that that's definitely something that I want to move away from going forward, and also kind of change my goals to be less specific. So like, instead of I need to hit this milestone with this certain game, it's like I just want to get that milestone. So I want to get 100 plats. I know a game that I would like to use for that, but I also haven't started that game yet. And
Right.
so it's like,
Yeah.
once I get to that point, I can start that game and play it. But it's not
Right.
like I've chosen every game from 75 plats to 100 plats and I got to do each one in sequence. It
Yes,
just
because
drives you
then,
insane.
yeah, well, because you might get to the third game on that list and not really be feeling like playing that, and you would rather do something else. And if you're being really rigid with yourself, that it's like, well, I said I was going to do this, and now I'm going to push forward and do that, you might have a less fun experience than if you just said, well, I don't feel like playing this right now. I'm going to play this other thing instead.
Yeah.
So,
But then the flip side of that is you end up playing all your new games and not doing your backlog games, and it
and
sits on there for
yeah,
5 years.
exactly. So trying to, like I said, have that balance where it's like, okay, I'm doing some of the things on my backlog, like for me this past month, God of War, Synergia, Far Cry 3, and Thomas Was Alone were all on my backlog, but Venba, Immortality, Iris Fall, and Astros were either things that I had that were on Games Pass or Games with Gold, or Astros was a new thing that I got with my PS4. So, PS5. And so, that balance between the two
And
is
then
helpful.
for me, Plague Tale, Wytchwood, Far Cry 6, and Phoenix. Even though I didn't finish them, I started them.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Phoenix took a good portion of the end of August for me. We're off my
Mm-hmm.
backlog. But Tinykin, Venba, Untitled Goose Game, Citizen Sleeper, and Astros were new. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's relatively 50-50. Like, I can't cut a game in half
Exactly.
and have 4.5 games.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good to have balance, and it's good to have flexibility. And
I feel
I
like that's
think,
something we were better at back in the day before we started to hone so hard in on our backlogs and worry
yes.
so much about, I bought a new game, should I have bought the new game or should I be playing an old game? Rather than,
Right.
I feel like a new game at the moment. And then
Yeah.
I feel like a backlog game.
Yeah. I think the difference for me has come with both getting access to a lot of things through acquiring a collection of Games with Gold and PS Plus games that are then part of this backlog. I don't consider them, I split my backlog in my mind between things I've paid money for specifically and things that I got on a service like that.
Hmm.
Um, but they are still games that you have access to. So you have this big, catalog of things that you can play that you have access to through that. I have a catalog of things I have access to through Games Pass. And then I have all these other things that I've bought because with being an adult and working, I have more money and things go on good sales. And so I snap them up sometimes when they're on good sales, and then they just sit there. Right. And so back in the day when I was younger, number one, there weren't as many games out. And number two, I didn't have as much money to buy them.
Yeah.
So it was much more, okay, I bought this new thing, I will play it.
And then we spent more time, even after we got all the achievements, playing the same games because
Yeah,
we didn't have anything else to play.
exactly. So it's a different problem for a different era of our lives, right?
Yeah, and I think for me, like, I got my Games with Gold backlog done because I don't know whether I'm going to have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was before I didn't know whether I'm going to have access to it or not.
Right.
But it's like I'd worked through them over the years that Games with Gold has been around. I've been playing a lot of them when they've been out,
Right.
whereas you haven't, and so you have more of that
Mm-hmm.
backlog left.
For
And I think,
sure.
like, for me, I don't really break my backlog down into Games with Gold games or games that I've bought. I just have these are the games I want to play.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I just play them as and when I feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than like, well, I bought that one, so I should play it first. It's more like, oh, what do I want to play?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is good, right? Like I think
Yeah, it's like
neither
we've
is
talked.
necessarily wrong.
Yeah,
It's just
where we've
different.
talked before. I mean, very much recently, with moving from Xbox to PS5 and us like thinking about what directions we're going in with gaming, you and I don't think exactly the same way about our gaming. Like, I'm very focused on my 100% on Xbox because I have been skilled enough and lucky enough to have games on there, bar ones that have unobtainables, that I've 100%ed, and I've done it in every single one. And so keeping that 100%, my 100%, which is like 99.7 something, is important to me, but less important to you because you have games that you'll never complete.
Right. I'm never going to finish Dance Dance Revolution Universe. I cannot. I can't do that. I'm just not good enough at the mechanics of that particular kind of game to be able to 100% it. So yeah, I think that changes the outlook a little bit, because it's not like, it's like, well, if I don't 100% complete something, it doesn't stress me out as much as it does you.
Yeah. I have that. I've put added pressure on myself. And so PlayStation was a good outlet for curtailing that at the start, where it's like, I'm not doing every DLC. And so if I come to a DLC that I can't do, or I don't want to do again, or, don't want to do for the first time, that's fine, because I have the plats, and that's really all I'm worried about. I'll play DLCs that I like, or am enjoying, like, but if there's one, like, I know for a fact I'm not going to do Dunwall City Trials again. I've done the majority of it, but I'm not putting myself through the hell of trying to get 3 stars, or the or the headshots, or the by my hand alone.
Yeah.
And I'm also
You've done the parts of it that you enjoy.
Yeah, it's like, for some reason, doing the bonfires thing in that's hard for a lot of people, I can just do it, and I don't really know how, but it just, like, I can see the Matrix kind of with that.
Yeah, it clicks with you.
It clicks with me, but it's like, I am for damn sure not doing those blue ribbons in Clash in the Clouds when I replay Bioshock Infinite, because you did that easier than I did. My luck on that game was atrocious. I just got screwed every time, and I was like, I need to do this thing. Oh, that guy's just killed himself. I can't do it now. I can't reset the checkpoint. I literally have to run through all the waves. And it was like wave 8 of 10. And I spent like 3 days doing one thing. And it's just, it's not fun. And it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have that, like, I don't have to do this, rather than Xbox, where it's like, I have to do this.
Right. Because we've put so much effort into doing something one way, that if you stopped doing it that way, it would feel like all the effort that you put in the past was meaningless.
Yes.
Right? Which we don't want to do. So, yeah. So really good months for us for August. It was good, and hopefully September will be continuing along the same trend. It's nice to be having a little bit of a vacation.
Yeah,
because
we both took time off together, so we
both took time off, and we'll be doing some co-op things together as well. So it's nice to have that, and it's nice that it's fall, and it's gonna hopefully be getting less hot, and
it's nice to have PS5s.
It's nice to have PS5s, and we're coasting in to the current generation. So
bring on Black Friday and Christmas sales, and we can populate our PS5 backlog with some games.
Yes, there's lots of things: Elden Ring, Demon Souls,
Last of Us Part 1, Plague Tale.
Yep. Requiem.
I was thinking it began with a V. I was like, it's not Vengeance.
Nope.
I don't know why. Valhalla is probably what I was thinking of. God of War Valhalla.
Ragnarok.
Oh my god.
You were thinking about Assassin's Creed, which we're not doing again.
Please shoot me now.
Nope, we're not doing that one.
We've been talking for too long.
Yes, we have. We've been talking for far too long. But anyway, Baldur's Gate 3, I'm really looking forward to. Like, that was one of my, I think, main reasons why I really wanted a next gen console, was because I want to be able to play that, because we love D&D, and so that one I think is gonna be really fun for us. So yeah, lots of things to look forward to now that we
Horizon as well for me.
Yep. And again, for me, I'll definitely play through Forbidden West again. I really enjoyed it. So
and the DLC.
Yep.
Because that's PS5 only, right?
Right. Yeah.
Burning Shore.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to lots of things, and it opens up a lot of opportunities to do some of the newer games now. So that's very cool.
And redoing some of the ones we've done already.
Yeah, because that's always...
we enjoy it.
Yes. I mean, when you enjoy something, you don't just do it once. It's like, if you really love a movie, you're not going to watch it one time and never watch it again.
Nope.
You know, replaying games for us is very similar to that. You know, to going back and watching an old TV series or an old movie that you like. It's a nice wave of nostalgia, and then sometimes rediscovering things about something old that makes it new again. So, yeah, good August, hopefully good September. We hope you guys are doing well.
Yeah, let us know what you've been playing and enjoying, and what you're hoping to get accomplished next month.
Indeed, and we will see you come the beginning of October to talk about September. So you take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next month.
Bye-bye.